Welcome to the Doc B podcast. I'm Aaron Cook, Director of Program Evaluation here in Clovis Unified and your host. Today I'm excited to sit down with Rick Watson, CEO at the Center for Advanced Research and Technology, also known as CART, and a 39-year veteran of Clovis Unified. Rick's journey has taken him from teaching biology at Clovis High to a variety of roles throughout the district, ultimately to help shape and lead CART into what it is today. In this episode, we'll talk about his path through Clovis Unified, the vision and culture behind CART, and the influence of Doc Buchanan's philosophies on his leadership and legacy. Let's get on to my conversation with Rick. All right, Rick, so share your name, your current position, and how you came to Clovis Unified.
My name is Rick Watson, and I'm currently the CEO at the Center for Advanced Research and Technology High School. My journey has been 39 years in Clovis Unified, and I bookended my career with 2 jobs, 14 years apiece. So I started at Clovis High School back in 1987, and I worked 14 years there, and I'm in my 14th year here at CART. So I feel like my 2 jobs I spent the longest in have been my bookends. I came to Clovis Unified back in 87 when I got hired. I grew up in the Valley, went away for school, went to Humboldt State University, and was encouraged by members of my family to come back to the Valley after graduate school and pursue a job in teaching. My whole family was in teaching. I never would have gone into teaching. I watched what happened to my family in teaching, and I said, I'm not doing it. But in graduate school, I got a chance to practice some teaching. I got some jobs as a graduate assistant, teaching some classes for a professor, and I kind of started liking it and thought, okay, I'll try. So I came back a couple of times from Humboldt and interviewed with these administrators called learning directors. And I was offered a job either at Clark Intermediate School or Clovis High. I interviewed with Colin Hindergaard and Bob Hansen back then. It was a weird process because I thought, who are all these people? I interviewed with all of these individuals. I said, what am I getting myself into? This is just strange. And then they said, you're going to interview with the superintendent. And it's this guy they call Doc. And I thought, wow. And they said, he's a legend. And we all know he's a legend. And I remember my interview, I was sitting there with all these guys who interviewed me, and they were behind me, and I was nervous as heck. And so I started at Clovis High School. I taught for 10 years at Clovis High School in biology. AP biology. I then became a counselor at Clovis High and a learning director, so that was my 14 years there. And then I really got on the administrative track and took a little detour and thought, if I'm ever want to be an elementary school principal, I need some lower level experiences. So I went to Clark Intermediate School as a learning director for a couple of years, and then I landed my first principalship at Maple Creek Elementary School. Loved it there. Elementary was different for me. I was a secondary guy, and so I enjoyed that experience. But I really wanted to be at middle school. I thought middle school was a place where kids are in a transitional phase in their life and they need people that want to be with them. And so I had a chance to be the principal at Kasner. So I was at Kasner for a couple of years and then was approached about a job at the district office. A unique situation during that time. I took it and I was an administrator for curriculum and instruction for a few years. But to be honest, I didn't like being away from school site. And so this opportunity for the Dean of Curriculum and Instruction position, which is where I started at CART, opened up and I applied and came here as the Dean of Curriculum and Instruction. And the CEO left and I applied for the CEO position and got it. I have thoroughly enjoyed my job here at CART. It's just a blessing, for sure.
You grew up in a family of educators, but weren't initially interested in teaching. What changed for you, and was there a particular person or experience that shifted your thinking?
When I was in college, I had a professor that kind of glommed onto me, really saw some potential in me. He said, I'd love you to do some graduate work. I found I liked it. I found that I was good at it, and that kind of shifted my thinking about teaching. I actually chose to do my teaching credential while there at Humboldt. I had some great master teachers there and really enjoyed that opportunity and was called by a member of my family who worked in Clovis Unified, Jim Fugman, and said, hey, why don't you think about coming back home and coming to Clovis Unified and pursue a teaching position in your chosen field, which was science. And I thought, why not? And like I said, came down here, had the chance to interview for 2 different positions. Even though I wanted to go into middle school at some point, didn't want to teach middle school at that point, I felt kind of lucky that I got the job at Clovis High. Really enjoyed working at Clovis High. There was only 2 high schools at that time, and it was really a great culture, great staff, great administrative staff to work with. And really it was that graduate teaching experience that kind of changed my mind.
You've described Clovis High in the late 80s as having a great culture. What did that actually look like for you, and what made that culture, the staff, and the administration feel so strong?
I think there's history there. Being the first high school in Clovis Unified, there's a history and a culture that's been established just because of that. But I always feel like culture is made by the people you work with. And I really enjoyed my colleagues in the science department, had great mentors, people that I admire today, still keep in touch with today, that were my mentors as teachers. I felt the idea of once a cougar, always a cougar really resonated with me. And I think it resonated with the community of staff. I think it resonated with kids. I just felt such a connection to that school. And I think it just is what had been established previous, and that legacy is still there today. Once a cougar, always a cougar. And I love that. I had that aspect of it, but I just truly enjoyed the people I worked with. It was fantastic.
You've just described what that culture of Clovis High felt like for you. So which of Doc's philosophies does that experience connect to most in your mind?
I think it would be about leading through relationships. I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt supported by the administration. I felt the administration was connected to the culture as we were. I think they were deeply steeped in the culture of Clovis Unified. Those people that were there, I feel like are legends in Clovis Unified today. We look back on them, we talk about them still today. The Renee Rodberries, the Jack Bohans, those people are just people we still talk about today. And I feel lucky that I had a chance to work with them and beside them during that time. And so I felt like the relationship building is something that I took with me into my leadership. And I feel like that's an area that I excel in my leadership.
Let's go back to the beginning of CART. How did you first get involved with CART, and what excited you about that opportunity?
It's an ironic story that actually in the very beginning, I was involved with the formation of CART. At Clovis High, I was teaching in the science department, and 3 of us, Lori Hayes, who was teaching anatomy and physiology at the time, I was teaching biology at the time, and an English teacher by the name of Andrea Hendricks, were asked if we would be interested in building, putting together, researching an opportunity for one of the labs here at CART, and that was the biomedicine lab. And I jumped. Lori and I were partners. We had taught together for years. We felt like it was something we could do. We felt like it was innovative. It was different. It was cutting edge. Let's help build this. And so we traveled. They sent us to different places to learn about project-based learning, about integrated instruction. We had a planning team that we met with periodically. But a few years into that, I was asked to pursue an administrative opportunity as a counselor. Cheryl Rogers, Carlo Prandini, 2 people I look up to highly, said, "You have potential. We'd love to see you get into administration. We have an opening in counseling. What would you think about going there, staying connected to CART as one of the liaison counselors?" So I feel full circle that I was here in the beginning. I remember coming over to this building, which at the time was empty, but there was a 2-story building just to the north of us that was the offices of Grundfos Pumps, which is what CART became. We met with the original CEO, Pat Wright. We did some planning. It was a neat experience to get involved with people from all over that were involved in the very beginning of it. So got involved then, and then just went on a little different track for a while.
For someone who's never heard of it, what is CART at its core? How did it get started? Who helped create it? And what has it grown into today?
The 3rd superintendent of Clovis Unified was Walt Buster. And Walt came down from the Bay Area to assumed the superintendency in Clovis Unified. Walt had worked at a school in the Bay Area called Sir Francis Drake High School, which was very cutting edge. Project-based learning, real-world experiences, doing some great things with technology. And when he came here, he was very interested in continuing that legacy of Sir Francis Drake High School. Started as a tech center idea in Walt's mind as a place that high school students in Clovis Unified could go, learn about technology, use technology in education. He had a lot of work to do to get to that point. But I think what sort of changed the trajectory a little bit was the business and industry partners that got involved. Really prominent business folks and people who were connected to Clovis Unified got involved and said, let's expand this idea a little further into a career and tech ed center. So let's not just look at technology, let's look at technology in use in education, but more importantly, how is it used in our industry? And that's how it kicked off. It wasn't really meant to be a school by itself. It was really built as a professional development center. CART was really meant to be a center where teachers from both of the partner school districts would come, observe and learn about cutting-edge practices in teaching around integrated instruction and project-based learning, real-world connection, and that really was what it was meant to be. But it also provided an important opportunity for kids. And I think what you find in high schools nowadays and back then is there's a population of students who aren't reaching their potential. And for whatever reason, it can be that the comprehensive environment doesn't work for them. There's issues going on for them at the comprehensive environment, lots of reasons. And CART really the staff felt like that was a population that would excel. The sort of the B, C, falling through the cracks kind of kids who really are looking for a different learning environment. CART thrived and really went after those kids. But CART has something for everybody. And so I think today I would classify CART as a true example of a college career readiness program center. But it really started as a technology vision in a superintendent's mind. It was an adventure that was costly. And so I think that's why Fresno Unified came on board and got involved, which was great because it offered opportunities to kids at 16 different high schools. I think that was a really important partnership that Walt did a good job of getting together with another district and seeing if they could make this work. And there were lots of bumps and bruises. There were 6, 7 times CART could have easily closed, but people persisted, hung on, and I'm glad they did.
So you've mentioned that CART brings together students and staff from both Clovis and Fresno Unified. For listeners who may not know, how is CART split between the two districts, and how does that blend shape the culture on campus?
I think one thing that's interesting is it's a leap. When you think about that you've got two districts that are steeped heavily in culture and history and the way they do business, and both of them took a leap at a program that had to be different and had to combine staff and students and resources from two different school districts, which operate very differently. Bumps and bruises come from different operating philosophies, and so that makes it difficult. But I think what really is important about this is, one, by design, the staff is 50-50. So 34 teachers, 17 of them are from Fresno Unified and 17 of them are from Clovis Unified. And I think that design is critical in that what it brings to the students. The staff doesn't necessarily have to be 50-50, but that teaching percentage, and it's meant to be 50-50 in terms of the student population. And just give you an example, we have 1,600 spots. You would hope that 800 of them are filled by Clovis Unified students and 800 by Fresno students. Kids make sacrifices to come here. They give up things. So I think what is really important for the kids is that mixture of kids coming from different high schools, because you'd think by design, and I think the originators by design thought it wouldn't work. They thought there was going to be fights. They thought there's no way these kids are going to get along, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. I think what happens is you have kids that come over who have an inherent interest in a career area, a career pathway. They want to explore it, and kids are kids. And when you get them together and they have a common interest, You can easily overcome those issues when you have common interest. And I think it's important for kids who come from different backgrounds, different experiences, to come together and learn from each other from those experiences and background. And I think that's what is so rich about the student population here at CART. The teaching population, while they still work for their respective district, are CART. And as CART teachers, they come together with the idea that they're going to create the best experience possible in those classrooms for the kids. And I think synergy comes from teams of 3 teachers in every classroom. One of them is a career and tech ed teacher, and one of them is an English teacher, and one of them is a teacher of another academic subject that aligns with that area. And I think what happens is you come here and you have such a different teaching and learning environment, a different adult culture, a different student culture. And I think we work very hard to create that, because why would you come here if it looks and feels just like your home school? And so we work hard to make sure there is a marked difference in what happens with the students when they come here.
You've described the culture at Clovis High in the late 80s and mentioned both leading through relationships and writing for the brand. What parallels do you see between that culture and what you're building at CART today? And then why did it work then, and why is it working now?
I'm 39 years in Clovis Unified. I learned a lot in Clovis Unified. I learned about relationships. I learned about a connection to a culture, a connection to a way of life, a ride for the brand, so to speak. And I rode the brand for all those years because it's all I knew. And I'm very proud of the fact that I have every bit of me, from a teacher to a counselor to an administrator, has aspects of the people that were my mentors in Clovis Unified. And so I am the leader I am today because of the people we worked with and the fact that I was steeped very heavy in the ride for the brand and the culture of Clovis Unified. And so everything I learned from being a teacher to being a counselor to being an administrator that I brought here to CART, I learned from Clovis Unified. Some of that I build into my work on our culture. And that is, people come from all different backgrounds and areas with different experiences and expectations. Nice that we're a small enough staff, because being an administrator at an elementary school, you have more of a family-ish experience because you're a small staff. High schools are a little bit more segmented departmentally. And so I felt what I learned from that familial kind of a culture that you have at an elementary school, I brought here to help people understand that while you may have worked in a Fresno Unified school, you may have worked in Clovis Unified, some have only worked here at CART. When you come here, we're CART. You go to Clovis Unified, you're Clovis Unified. And you go to Fresno Unified, you're Fresno Unified. And so when you come here, let's work on a culture, even for the kids. When they come here, even though we celebrate the fact that they're a Rough Rider at Roosevelt or a Cougar at Clovis High, we celebrate that. It's a great aspect of what happens here at CART. Kids still stay connected to their home school and all the traditions that they learn from their home school. It's a great opportunity. But when you're at CART, you're CART. And you're a psychology student at CART. You're an engineering student at CART. And we work on that as teachers, even though you might work in Fresno Unified and pay dues. And you might have a different benefit package. And you may get paid in a different salary structure. You're CART. And I feel like what I learned in my experiences, all the cultures at all the different schools all have their own unique experience and culture to them, even though we're all Clovis Unified. I learned that and I brought it here. And I'm really proud of the fact that I think kids feel that. I hope kids feel that. I hope our staff feels that. When they're here, they're CART. But at the same time, we love Fridays because kids are all wearing their different uniforms from all the different schools. And it's so neat to watch. It's so neat to see them knowing that they might be on the football field together tonight as rivals. When they're here, they're CART.
To its core, what makes CART unique and special?
Really is about the engagement and the fact that kids are hands-on, and it's a type of learning experience that keeps them involved. They don't have time for the other stuff, right? They're just working hard. They're on their projects. They're in their teams, and they're on a deadline. It has the real world feel to it, too. It's like you're being treated like you're in a workplace as well. And In the workplace, yeah, there might be drama, but we don't bring it to work. There might be drama at your home school, but we don't bring it to CART. They're still teenagers. We don't forget that.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to Doc. You were hired by Dr. Buchanan, who you've described as a legend in Clovis Unified. What stands out to you about that hiring process and your first interview with him?
What I remember about the hiring process was my awe in the number of people that I met in the process. And I think the message that we still give our new employees is this is your support network. If I had 3 interviews at the district office level, I interviewed with the principal and the deputy principal and the learning directors. I felt like every single one of them had my back. And I felt as a brand new baby teacher, I could call on any one of them at any time. And so I remember the support that I felt all the way to the point that when I interviewed with Doc, all 5 of those people were sitting right behind me. I was sitting across the desk from Doc, very intimidating. Doc had a bellowing kind of a voice and a strong presence, but I also felt safe in that presence. He made you feel like a member of the family, a member of the team. And while I couldn't tell you what those interview questions were, I believe they were somewhere around at least science background of some sort. I do remember all 5 individuals said, don't mess up the last question. And the last question was easy back then because there was only 2 attack units. There was the blue attack unit and there was the red attack unit. And the last question was, which unit will you be working for? And I blurted out blue because that's what Clovis High was. It was Clovis High and Clovis West and all the feeders in between. But I also felt that wasn't my last opportunity. Meet Doc, talk with Doc. I always felt like he made you feel like you could call his office if you needed to talk to the superintendent. I always felt that and astounded at who he knew. He knew everyone. Doc always referred to me by first name wherever and whenever he saw me. And I'm like, how does that man do that? It's just amazing to me that he knows everybody. And so I just felt from that day forward that the culture of Clovis Unified was for me. I just felt the family because the Fugmans were my family. And I felt, gosh, if Jim works here and Susan, his wife, worked here, his kids all went to Clovis Unified schools, that I too belong here. I have always felt like I belong.
Why do you think Doc asked you that question of which attack unit you'd be working for? What was he trying to accomplish? What was he trying to communicate or draw out with it?
I think it was connection. Competition in Doc's mind was good. And so he wanted to make sure you knew that your academic competition was against the Clovis West area. I wasn't necessarily into sports and those kinds of things, but boy, howdy, on the Friday night when Clovis High played Clovis West, boy, it was an extravaganza. It was just, you felt lightning. You felt so excited about that competition between the 2 high schools. And the next day it was like, hey, we're all in this together. We're Clovis Unified. Let's ride for the brand and go forward. But I think it was just feel a connection to your high school area as the blue unit. I would say I was connected to the Clovis High area, but I think he wanted you to know you have connection and we do compete. And it is the basis of what we do, but it makes us better. I felt like I wanted to do good for them, and I wanted to do good for Doc. And I think that's what all of us do in Clovis Unified. We want to do good. We want to be proud and contribute to the legacy.
Before we wrap up, is there a favorite story or piece of advice from Doc that you haven't had a chance to share yet?
Yeah, early on in my career at Clovis High School, Clovis High was awarded National Blue Ribbon status. Big deal. Still a big deal. But in those days, not too many high schools would get those awards. And I remember Doc coming out to the school in a kind of a congratulatory visit. And I mentioned this earlier, but I felt like as he was going around and shaking everybody's hand and saying, congratulations, this is a fabulous opportunity for you all, just knowing everybody's name. And he spent, I would say, a minute or 2 with each individual. And you could tell, and I felt it, like you were the only 2 people in the world at that point, that he wanted to focus on you, say thank you for the work you do. That just resonated with me, and Doc did that all the time. Doc was the kind of guy that duties is assigned, right? There's the famous picture of him driving a lawnmower, right? I feel like that's something that I aspired to. No matter what, whatever has to be done, we do it. And I thought that was great. Later in Doc's career, just before he retired, the board of directors here at CART asked him to come out and talk to them about leadership and about his story and his background and his legacy. And I remember him saying to the board at that time, don't wait to the end of your career to think about your legacy. At that point, it's too late. Think about those moments every day that happened to you or happened because of you that contribute to your legacy. And I feel like Doc's legacy was 30 plus years. Every year he contributed to his legacy. Every day he contributed to his legacy. And I thought about that ever since he shared that and thought, don't wait. Hopefully your legacy has been established over your time in all the different places you've been and all the things you've done.
That's great. You know, as I'm thinking, CART is not a traditional 4-year school, and your students come and go, but I'm interested, do you have any student stories that you could share about something that you'll never forget or an impact that a student had on you in your career?
When I was principal at Maple Creek Elementary School, I met the Kong family, wonderful family. Patrick, older brother, younger brother, students at Maple Creek, and just a contributing family, very proud family. And I remember Patrick was a high burner kid. His brother was a special needs kid, so they had really different challenges with their kids. When I went from Maple Creek to Kasner, I went along with some of my students because Maple Creek fed into Kasner, and Patrick was one of them. So I remember going to Kasner and watching Patrick grow and do good things, and I was just always proud of him. And when I left there, he went to Clovis West, and I followed him, stayed in touch with the family, just so I could see how Patrick was doing, and he excelled, did fabulous, took tons of AP classes, was very involved, and went on to UCLA and got a degree in biology, which I thought was cool because I'm a scientist. I taught biology, and during his senior year, I was here at CART. He came to CART. He was in the environmental science lab and the engineering lab, and I thought, gosh, well, how neat that I was his principal in elementary school, I was his principal in junior high, and now I'm his principal here at CART. And then obviously he went on to college and came back to this area because, like me, his family said, come back to the area, come back. And he became a wildlife biologist for a local company and came back to CART to actually contribute to the environmental science lab as a mentor. So he actually mentored kids on their spring project and took them out, and he was a professional in collecting data on birds, on different things, a lot of surveys he did, and I thought that was so cool that he came back to CART. This is a little hard for me. We just hired him as a teacher in the environmental science lab. So that's such a neat story for me to have him come back after all this time and all the opportunities I had to hopefully affect his trajectory of his career. And here he is in his second year as a teacher at CART. That's such a great story to me. And he wanted to give back in so many ways. And we have lots of those stories. I think so many of our kids want to come back, and we have 5 teachers here who are CART grads, which I think is cool. Such a neat kid. I love having him on staff.
So after 39 years of working in Clovis, your retirement is just on the horizon. What are you looking forward to? What does the future hold for you?
Yeah, I would say transition for me has always been tough. I don't like leaving places because I get very connected to the people. And so everywhere I've ever left has been very difficult. But leaving Clovis High after 14 years was really tough. And leaving here is going to be tough for me. But it's time. You get to that point where you know it's time to move on and allow someone else to have impact on CART. Professionally, I have a network of folks that I've met through CART, the Fresno Business Council and Stewardship Network and the San Joaquin Valley Manufacturing Alliance. As the CEO of CART, I've made connections with these industry folks. And I think I'm looking forward to having an impact on the community through some of these organizations. And asked me to do some work for them. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, but I also hope I have an opportunity to give back to CART some way, some fashion.
For a student who's thinking about coming to CART, why should they take the leap?
I think that they'll find an environment here that feels safe, that feels comfortable. Safe and comfortable learning is really important to all of us. I think they'll find an environment here that is not judgmental. I think kids feel like we treat them like adults here, and they have a lot more responsibility, which is good, and voice and choice over their learning. And I think that's exciting for kids. I think they'll find a different enough learning and teaching environment that it makes a difference to them. Very caring and loving teachers. I think you'll find the synergy that you find from having 3 teachers in a classroom who have different backgrounds, knowledge, experiences that they bring to that subject area or career. It's really exciting. I think kids enjoy that aspect. And you'll also find friendships you never would have made in your homeschool environment. I love when they say, I'm a Clovis High Cougar, but my best friend goes to Roosevelt. It's something they would never say if they didn't go to CART. So I think that's worth the leap.
If Doc were to magically appear and walk these halls with you, what would he notice? What would he see and what would he say?
I think he'd be really excited about the engagement of the students, seeing students work together in groups, work in teams, having great conversation with each other, roaming the halls and feeling like the whole building is their learning environment. I think he would be excited to see the number of adults besides the teachers and staff that are here in the building, bringing industry experience, career exploration opportunities to our kids. I think he would be excited to see that we have those connections and those relationships. I think he would be excited to see Clovis Unified work with another school district. This is our 25th anniversary this year. For 25 years, it's worked. And I think that would be something that he'd be excited about, to see the different learning environment that we create here. He'd be excited about that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head when you talked about Doc would be proud of seeing your students working in groups. That is in his charge. I totally agree. So looking at all the philosophies of Doc, is there one that's most special to you?
I would say autonomy with responsibility, because I think what's grand about CART is the opportunity our teachers have to be creative, to be different, to explore, to innovate. Because while in a traditional school district, oftentimes you are teaching a curriculum that is handed to you, a textbook that is handed to you, something that comes down from the top that is assessment driven. And that's not the philosophy we have here. The philosophy is you're a team of expert teachers, and you have a career and tech ed person and an English person and another academic area. You have amazing experiences that you're bringing, and go for it. Create, develop your own curriculum, develop your own projects, work with industry professionals to see that what our kids are learning is today, the future, tomorrow, not something that's in a textbook that's already 10 years old when it comes out. I think that's just really an opportunity for the autonomy of teachers to be what they wanted to become. But at the same time, you have expectations. You have a responsibility of seeing that kids are safe and that they are learning, that you are creating that CART-like environment with the whole child approach, building relationships with kids, you're building relationships with adults. Not easy necessarily to work in a classroom with 2 other teachers, right? Because we weren't trained that way. We were trained to go in a classroom, have the autonomy to teach whatever we wanted, within reason, of course. That's different here. But I think at the same time, it lends itself to this opportunity for teachers to get better every day. You might feel intimidated if your partner is sitting and watching you teach every day, but it's also an opportunity to get better as a teacher. And so I think it has such built-in opportunities for creativity and innovation in teaching within that culture responsibility of making sure the CART culture stays true. It's a synergy. It's really, how do I make you better? How do I contribute to what you're talking about? I have some experiences in that area. I get to contribute them. I think that's wonderful.
Okay, our final question. If you were sitting down with a brand new teacher, what advice would you give them about how to approach the work, build relationships with students and families, and still keep their own life and family in balance?
I would say to a new teacher, be patient. It takes time to learn your craft, number one. It takes time to learn a culture of a school environment that you're at. It takes time to understand the expectations of you. I would also say be humble, be open to opportunity, be open to help. Rely on your colleagues, find a network, find a partner, find somebody that you can rely on for when you have those tough days or you have a tough student that you're dealing with, because people can bring different experiences and approaches to you. I'd say do that. I would say drilling down, call parents, call guardians. Teachers seem sometimes to be afraid to include that partnership, and parents just want the best for their kids. They want their kids to be successful, and sometimes you learn things that are going on by including them in the partnership. So I would say don't be afraid to call parents. I think going back to the humbleness and having humility in that you don't know everything. You need to learn from folks. But at the same time, I would say critical to my experience as a teacher and my experience as a leader was building relationships. You have no idea how far it goes if you know the names of the kids of your teachers and ask about what's going on and have teachers feel comfortable enough to come in and sit down and talk about things going on in their personal lives that may be getting in the way of them doing their best work. One of my strengths is being relational, getting to know people, getting to understand people, and encouraging people while teaching. You're here, you're devoted to the kids in your classroom every day, but you also need to spend time with your family and be involved in your family's lives. When my kid was young, he's 32 years old now, I got into administration for a variety of reasons. And he was an athlete and he went to Clovis schools, and I missed some of those things. And so today, I highly encourage my people, get out, go to those events, go to your kids' award ceremony, go to their sports things, because their lives pass quickly and you'll regret it if you don't. And so I feel that's one thing I've always developed with my people is good relationships where they feel like I'm supportive of them and they feel like they can come to me when things are not going well and things are getting in the way, so that you understand what's going on and what's getting in the way of them doing their best work. And I think that's something I would impart on anybody going into teaching, anybody going into learning as a teacher. Build relationships with your kids and their families. A lot of times we can quickly judge a kid for their behavior or things going on, and until you've walked a mile in their shoes and understand what's going on in their life, you don't know them. Once you understand kids and understand their families, a lot of times you can reach them and they're going to learn from you. So I think those are just critical things, and I hope the person who takes my position continues to allow our folks to stay connected to their personal lives. I feel like I get the best out of my people every day because they still get to stay connected to what's important to them.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed hearing from someone who makes CUSD a special place for students and families. This podcast is dedicated to every classified and certificated employee who shows up each day to enrich students' lives and help them be their best in mind, body, and spirit. We'll see you next time on the Doc B podcast. As Doc always said,
don't ever forget our motto, sickle.